नमस्कार, मैं सदफ खान। स्वागत है आपका यूनिवर्सिटी सर्कल में। जवाहरलाल नेहरू यूनिवर्सिटी में छात्र संघ चुनाव की तैयारियां जोरों से चल रही हैं। देश के बड़े बड़े राजनेताओं का कैंपस में आना भी लगातार जारी है। इसी कड़ी में देश के जाने माने राजनेता और पूर्व शिक्षा राज्य मंत्री शशि थरूर ने JNU का रुख किया।
Okay, can you hear me? I love the energy in this room. You folks are absolutely amazing. Wonderful to see you all. विकास आपने बहुत कुछ कहा जो बिल्कुल करेक्ट है। मेरे ख्याल में जो विकास ने आपने कहा यही तो सही रास्ता है। But let me take a little longer to get there. You know, it's great to be in JNU because JNU has become a national symbol of student politics. Today, anywhere in India, when we discuss what is happening to our universities, to our campuses, when we discuss what the future direction of student life in this country is shaping up to be, the example everyone cites is JNU. So you all are standing at the crucible in many ways of the battle for intellectual and academic freedom in our country. It's you and all that's happened here in the last 3 or 4 years, the campus disturbances, the arrests, the sedition charges, all of this that have put student politics very much in the center of the struggle to maintain the freedoms that we'd like to take for granted in our democracy, but which in many ways are being besieged today. So congratulations to all of you for being right at the center of the action. JNU is the place where the future of India is being decided. Now I know all of you don't necessarily share one particular point of view. You shouldn't, because in a university campus you should all be thinking for yourselves and thinking differently. But I am here to address the topic that was given to me. Is there space for centrist politics in India today? And it's a very important question which no one would have bothered to ask a few decades ago, when it was taken for granted that our country's politics occupied the middle ground. Today the question needs to be asked because increasingly we are seeing a politics of polarization, of religious polarization, communal polarization, caste polarization, and ideological polarization. And when one looks at the argument for what kind of ideology makes sense to a young person, one often finds that young people, students, fired by enthusiasm, fired by the zeal of the new ideas they're discovering, the new books they're reading, the new political experiences they're having, tend often to be attracted to one or the other extreme. Centrism very rarely appeals on a university campus. At JNU, sometimes student politics has often seemed to be about various shades of left. Right? So there's a left party, there's a party that's more left than the left party. And then there's a party that's more left than the left of the left party. And now, of course, there is a right-wing party as well that has come up on your campus. And I think it's important to ask ourselves what these ideas stand for. Now, fundamentally, before you discuss centrism, you have to ask yourself the question, center of what? Right? So, normally in political theory, and many of you are studying all of this, you know that ideology tends to be discussed on an economic paradigm. That is, that the normal assumption is that right-wing economics is laissez-faire economics. It says the market has the answer to all the economic dilemmas of society, that the role of the government is to stay out of the way and let the business people and capital actually create wealth for the society. That's right-wing economics. And left-wing economics on the opposite says that essentially because the rich and the powerful control many of the levers of production, that it's necessary for the state to compensate for that by actually controlling and regulating the market, in some cases abolishing the market, and ensuring that the government acts in the interests of the weakest sections of society, the lowest, the poorest classes. That's left-wing economics. And India has tended to be sort of on the mixed economy path, where we have a bit of this and a bit of that, a bit of state control, a bit of free market, and we wander on. Now, I'm going to come to this in more detail later. But the point I want to make is that when in India we talk about left, right, and center, economics is not enough. Because in our country's politics, the main ideological divisions in our country are not merely over economic issues. As you know, the left, the Marxist persuasion, believes that the crucial issue is control over the means of production, and that the class struggle defines their political agenda. Whereas the right, of course, says that class is irrelevant, that the objective is for everyone to become wealthy and prosperous. But that alone is not the contention in Indian politics. Our politics is complicated and confused by issues of caste, by issues of region, by issues of language, by issues that go into what one might broadly describe as culture. So that, for example, when the BJP or the RSS is described as right-wing, people are not looking at the economic policies of the Swadeshi Jagran Manch, which is the RSS's main outfit that thinks about these issues. Because the economics of the Swadeshi Jagran Manch are actually extremely left-wing economics. They want state control, they want protectionism, they want restrictions on imports, they want restrictions on capital. They are completely on the basis of nationalist self-reliance, a party or a group whose economic ideas would be considered left of center. But no one thinks of the BJP and the RSS as left-wing. Why? Because their ideology is centered not on economics, but on cultural self-assertion. And therefore there is this argument that by speaking for an idea of India, which is the idea of a pristine Hindu Rashtra, an idea that excludes those who don't qualify in the terms of the RSS and the BJP, that they are therefore right of center. They're right of center culturally, rather than, in ideological terms, right of center economically. Now it's another matter that the policy prescriptions of the Swadeshi Jagran Manch are not followed by the BJP governments we have seen. Neither the Vajpayee government nor the Modi government has actually implemented the economic policies of the Swadeshi Jagran Manch. On the contrary, they have actually been very much in favor of capitalism. In fact, what many of us accuse them of doing is catering to crony capitalism. Their friends in the big business and big industry are the ones they cater to. But that's a different issue, and we'll come to it once again as we discuss economics. Now, this complicates the understanding of right and left. In India, when we talk about left, again, we don't only talk about economics. Yes, we do accept that when we speak about left, there is an assumption, there is an understanding of the importance of the means of production, there is an understanding of what they see as the importance of the class struggle. But in fact, the left in our country also feels very passionately about certain caste issues and tribal issues. They see themselves in the vanguard of the struggle for the rights of the Dalits, the Adivasis, the minorities. So that's, broadly speaking, the paradigm within which the left-right debate in our country is being situated. Now, what do we see over the last 4 years? We are seeing a narrowing of the space for alternative views to be expressed, from those of the ruling dispensation. Now, what we are seeing with this is a new definition of political discourse. Let's face it, when we had the UPA in power, there were lots of people who disagreed with the UPA governments. Their views were aired, they spoke their minds. In many ways, when you look at Mr. Modi's media coverage in 2013 and 14, arguably he got more attention, more space and more time than the opposition, than the government itself, even though he was an opposition figure. But today what we're seeing is the opposite. We are seeing a couple of rather concerning developments. First is the perception that the ruling party equals the government and the government equals the nation, which means that criticism of the ruling party is not only anti-ruling party, it is also anti-government and anti-national. So suddenly the demonization of dissent has become a new issue in our country. Acid tests and litmus tests are being issued every day from this government. You remember a couple of years ago there was the Bharat Mata Ki Jai controversy. Now, suddenly it was decided that if you didn't say Bharat Mata Ki Jai, you were anti-national. I don't mind saying Bharat Mata Ki Jai, but I have no intention of saying it because Mr. Amit Shah tells me I must say it. And equally, if a Muslim citizen of India, and I'm not saying that all Muslims take this position, but some do, if a Muslim citizen of India says that his religion or his understanding of his religion does not permit him to deify the nation as a mother goddess, and therefore he will say Jai Hind, he will say Jai Bharat, but he will not say Bharat Mata Ki Jai. As far as I'm concerned, our democracy and our constitution gives him the right not to say Bharat Mata. And if he doesn't say it, he's not anti-national. On the contrary, he's expressing his own idea of his patriotism in his own way. Now this is something that our current government refuses to understand, or at least pretends to refuse to understand. I have actually been in audiences where people have stood up and challenged the audience. Who will say Bharat Mata Ki Jai? And everyone of course quickly says it. And then they say who will not say it? And only a few of us have the courage to raise our hands. Now this is the problem. In a democracy, there should be no litmus tests. But there are now with these people who are in power today. The definition of what is anti-national spills over into a new definition of what is sedition. The Supreme Court, in a series of rulings, has said that sedition can only apply when violence is involved, or the threat of violence, or inducement to violence, or insistence upon violence. But here, we've had sedition charges slapped on JNU student leaders merely for leading a demonstration. That is the problem with this new approach to what is permissible. If dissent is not acceptable, then what happens is that anyone who deviates from the norm, and the norm itself is being redefined rightward, anyone who deviates from the norm is vulnerable. So we've just seen now the arrests of 6 or 7 people, none of whom has been freshly accused of any act relating to violence, but they've been arrested merely because they hold ideas which as Indian citizens they are legally and constitutionally free to hold, but which the government does not like. And that's not democracy. They may be sympathizers of the Maoists, we don't even know if that's true of all of them. But I can tell you, as somebody who decidedly is not a sympathizer of Maoists myself, that I would believe in their right to have that wrong-headed belief, because that's what democracy is. Now, we are looking at a time in our politics in which the ruling party and the ideas the ruling party holds have managed to seize the commanding heights not only of government, but through government, of the media, our television channels, and mainstream public expression. With the result that a sort of officially sanctified idea of what is the right thing to believe is being spread. I ask you, in a country like ours, with the diversity we have, is there always one right thing to believe? Should we not all have our own views of what is right and be able, as you do, I hope, in your campus, to stand up, to defend them, to argue them, to change your mind if you wish? That's what intellectual freedom is all about. That's what democracy is all about. I'll tell you a little story about myself in coming to this issue of centrism. When I lost the election to be Secretary of the United Nations, within a few days of my resuming my normal work at the United Nations, though I was already planning at that point to leave the organization, I was approached by then a former minister of the previous BJP government, and he said to me, "You must come and join us. So I'm sure that the other side is going to be wooing you. You must come and join my party. We need you in Indian politics." And I said to him, "But don't you know what I have been writing and believing all these years? I've articulated a certain vision of India that doesn't agree with the BJP's notion." So he said, "Oh, that doesn't matter. We believe in merit. After all, can you agree with anything that any party believes? After all, there will be some things you disagree with us, there will be some things you disagree with them, come to us." So I very politely said goodbye, and then indeed, when I came back to India after leaving the UN, I went to Kerala where the Communist Party was in power, and I found myself very surprisingly being invited by them to associate myself with their activities and their beliefs. And I again said, "But I'm not really a big fan of Marx." Having read Marx on the subject of India, it becomes very difficult to take Marx seriously. Because what many people don't realize is that Karl Marx wrote articles on India for the New York Herald Tribune in 1858, and he had the most offensive ideas. He thought British colonialism was a good thing, that India was mired in something he called Oriental despotism, and that colonial rule was actually helping India break forth into modernity, and other such fatuous notions, which had much more to do with an old white guy sitting in a British library than with anything to do with the reality of the experience of India under British rule. So I was not a fan of Marx, and I didn't think that class struggle and means of production explained all the dilemmas facing societies and economies, and particularly in the context of India, where, for example, caste was often a more oppressive social reality than class, where you could be rich but if you're from the wrong caste, you suffered certain disabilities. In that kind of country, Marx's analysis had no credible place as far as I was concerned. So I wasn't interested. And then, to my surprise, I was asked by the Congress Party whether I would join. And I thought about it long and hard, and this is where the centrism came. As I studied what I could see of Indian politics up to that point, remember just a couple of years previously, the BJP had fought an election on the slogan "India Shining," but they had never bothered to ask who India was shining for. And to my mind, that was trouble. It was not just the baggage of bigotry, of Hindutva, of the destruction of the Babri Masjid, of the intolerance that was expressed by so many members and leaders and fellow travelers of the BJP that bothered me. It was also that when they had a chance of 6 years of power, they did not seem to think about the lowest, poorest, weakest elements of our society. On the other hand, we had the left, which systematically seemed to oppose every policy that would pull the poor out of poverty. Every time that any government came up with a program that would empower the poor and get them to break free of the shackles of poverty, the first critics were the left. And I began to wonder whether that was because they felt the poor needed to stay poor for them to have anyone to vote for. And the left, of course, was also mired not just in a 19th century ideology, but in a generally backward attitude towards technological progress. So for example, you look at when computers first came to India, when Rajiv Gandhi as Prime Minister introduced computers into India, and there were computers placed in the life insurance corporation offices and public sector banks, the communist parties organized bands of gundas to go in and smash those computers. That actually happened in 1984-85 because they felt that computers would cost people jobs. 10 years later, when mobile phones had to be introduced in India, the communists again opposed it, saying mobile phones are bad because they're going to be playthings of the rich. And as you know, today every communist leader has at least one mobile phone chirping away in his pocket. But equally important, what was demonstrated was that the communists were consistently wrong about every single development in the human race to technological progress, but they needed 15 years to realize that. And the country doesn't have 15 years to waste with that. And that left me with the Congress. What did I think about the Congress? I had been a critic of the Congress in my youth. In my early books, you'll see a lot of negative writings about the Congress, and particularly the emergency. But I felt that the Congress, after 1991, had got a couple of things right. It had freed the economy from the shackles of statism. It had decided to end the license permit quota raj that had put bureaucrats rather than business people on the commanding heights of the economy. But at the same time, it remained committed to social justice. Because I have often argued, and I've said this very phrase in Parliament, that the magic of the market will not appeal to those who cannot afford to enter the marketplace. But it believed in social justice. It was committed to the rights of the weakest sections of our society. And this agenda is what I would call today a centrist agenda. It shares with the left the concern for the poorest of the poor, the Dalits, the Adivasis, the handicapped, the excluded, the marginalized. It shares with the right a respect for wealth creation and for technology and technological progress. But it marries the two in a way that neither the right nor the left are prepared to do. This is why I believe that we need to fight assertively for an active center. The problem with centrist politics in many countries is that it is often seen as weak and unassertive politics. The perception is, if you're not on the left or the right, you're in the middle of the road, then that's exactly where you'll get run over by all the traffic. You get hit from both sides. But the fact is, what we need is an assertive and confident centrism. We need a centrism that says, you are wrong and you are wrong. We believe we have the right approach for the nation, and that's what the Congress Party and the NDC wants to do. Now, I know you're facing elections at JNU on the 14th of September. You have to vote for student leaders who will effectively represent student interests. But you are also looking at a larger political picture in our country. You are looking at what kind of message can be sent to the broader student community around the country that looks to JNU to set an example. And you are also looking at the broader political message to the nation. Are you once again going to return some extreme left kids, idealist, wonderful people, I'm sure, good human beings, but whose ideas are so far-fetched that they will find no space, no traction in the mainstream of our society? Are you going to fall into the opposite trap and vote for people whose idea of democracy is that whatever Mr. Modi and Mr. Amit Shah says is right? Or are you going to give yourself the scope and the space to give and repose some faith in the active, thoughtful center? See, to my mind, and I'm quite willing to take your questions and comments, to my mind, the challenge facing our country today is to reconcile all these ideas that are fundamentally in conflict with each other, to reconcile them in a way that will bring Indians together rather than drive them apart. The politics of communal polarization divide India. The politics of class struggle divide India. The politics of both left and right actually end up keeping us farther apart. The politics of the center says, let us be united in a common cause, let us find common ground from both sides, but let us move forward with determination. So my argument to you today is, don't be misled by those who speak in terms of what is national, anti-national, how you can be truly patriotic, or how you can be truly a person of principle. The best principles are the ones that work, and the best principles that work are the ones that include, that bring people together, that help build out a better India. We want unity. They want uniformity. We want consensus. They want conformity. These are very different ideas. What we're talking about is, you have your own views, come and meet in the middle. You have your own views, come and meet in the middle. Let's all get together for a common purpose of creating and building a better India. I really want to leave a few minutes for questions from all of you, and I know the hour is late. So I'm going to bring this to a close now. But I will end by saying very simply, when we ask, is there space for centrism, we have to acknowledge that that space is being squeezed by both sides. And we have to recognize for ourselves the danger in that squeezing. Because the more we squeeze the center, the more we create a polarized India. The more we create a politics of intolerance on both sides, the more we create the risk of division, of clash, of failure. We need to expand that space that is being squeezed. We need to create the space for centrism, because only from the center can India be governed effectively as it was for so many years. Let me say to you with pride, we have come a long way since 1947, and much of the progress we made from the center. It's time we return there. Thank you very much. I'll take your questions.
JNU छात्र संघ चुनाव की हर खबर के लिए जुड़े रहिए यूनिवर्सिटी सर्कल के साथ। धन्यवाद।